We actually did begin at 7.
Much of what we did tonight can actually be found in the readings in session 5. Did you get choices 2, 4, and 7? This is the definition of a sentence. Let's review clauses to see how they're like sentences. If you chose options 2 and 4, you defined a clause. Make sure to review the readings posted in each session. A sentence is an independent clause and therefore has a verb, a subject, and a complete thought. All clauses, a dependent clause has a subject and a verb. However, it also has a subordinating conjunction. If you chose 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7, you know punctuation and capitalization and definition of a simple sentence. Every element listed here except number 3 applies to a compound sentence because it may be a question. Get number 4 as the definition of a coordinating conjunction. Remember fanboys as coordinating conjunctions. Only the first statement is the prescriptive grammar rule for punctuating a compound sentence. For a moment of levity. Items 2 and 4 define a clause, whether independent or dependent. He has a point. Let's look at the example next to the smiley face. New diseases were introduced in the Indian population is the independent clause in the complex sentence. After Columbus came to the New World is the dependent clause. Therefore, the example here has everything but number 3. However, had it begin with after Columbus came to the New World, comma, new diseases were introduced in the Indian population, then it would have all elements. Like the previous example, the elements have everything except number 3. They must have all the rest. They have a comma only when the dependent clause comes first, as in the example shown in the slide. Do you remember the first 3 rules? Let's review. A simple sentence has an independent clause, a subject, a verb, a complete thought. It begins with a capital and ends with a period. A compound sentence begins with a capital letter, has an independent clause, may have a semicolon as you see in blue, and has a second independent clause. It ends with a period, or it may end with a question mark or an exclamation point. An independent clause, a comma, fanboys, the coordinating conjunctions, and another independent clause also indicate a compound sentence. Finally, a complex sentence has an independent clause and a dependent clause without a comma. When the dependent clause comes first, as you see in the 5th example, use a comma, as you see in green, and then the independent clause. When you have a compound complex sentence, just combine the rules. These are 1, 2, and 3. Let's review some of the more frequent errors that people make in commonly confused words. Let's look at these. Here has ear in it, and it's what you do with your ears. There, T-H-E-R-E, has here in it. Here and there are places. There, T-H-E-I-R, has heir in it, one who inherits. And there means belonging to them. They've inherited something. As verbs, accept and accept are direct opposites. One is to receive and one is to exclude. Look at the examples. When you want except as a preposition, you are also leaving something out. Use this link for more practice. It is interactive and you will get a score from it. If I had a nickel for every time I saw a lot spelled as one word, I'd be a millionaire by now. It's two words just as a little are. A-L-L-O-T means to give out or distribute. Similarly, all right is two words just the way all wrong are. The dresses look all right. The ties look all wrong. Among is used for distribution for more than two. Between is just two people. How many times have you heard this incorrectly? Keep this between you and I. No, you need an object of a preposition. If you are talking about quantity or amount, you cannot count something. If you can count it, you are talking about number. Many people have trouble with as if or as though and like. Make sure that you use as if or as though when you have a clause following it. Like is a preposition and has a noun or pronoun and its modifiers following it. She looks like a scarecrow is different from she looks as though she is a scarecrow. Eliminate being as and being that from your vocabulary, both oral and written. They're substandard English. Use since or because. We lost the game because our forward was injured, or since our forward was injured, we lost the game. Every day is another word that gives people fits. As one word, it means common. Sunrise is an everyday occurrence, meaning it's a common occurrence or a daily occurrence. As two words, you can substitute each day. Every day you delay paying your bill, interest penalties accrue. This is related to amount and number. Again, if you can count something, it's fewer in number. If it's an amount, it's less in quantity. I have less hair than I used to as a young man. Like being that, eliminate reason is because or reason is why from your vocabulary. Both are substandard. After the verb to be, you need a noun or a pronoun. You can use that, which introduces a noun clause. Let's look at the examples. The reason we moved is that we wanted to be closer to the office. Or, why we moved is to be closer to the office. Both are correct. This is another expression that would make me rich if I had a nickel for every time it was misused. Regard is a verb meaning to have respect for, to have a feeling of, to be concerned with. Regards with the S are friendly good wishes. I write you emails and I send my best regards. Here's another substandard expression you can eliminate from your vocabulary. Use sure to or try to. Forget sure and try and. Be sure to call me. Try to reach me. Some of you struggle mightily with the difference between than and then. Look at the mnemonic. If you think of than as comparison, and then, which rhymes with when, it's a time. Use E in time and when, and A in than and comparison. Back to there, and there. Remember that air is inherited something, and there means belonging to them. And here is a place, and there is a place, and that helps. When you want to say they are, substitute it for the other there. Now you have 2 links for usage. These are interactive and will give you an actual score. Let's review pronouns. These are the same ones that you would use when you conjugate a verb. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. Add to. Who and whoever. These are the indefinite pronouns. Let's see how subject pronouns are used. It's simple enough to say that it's the subject of a sentence, a predicate pronoun, or an appositive of the subject or predicate pronoun. What does that mean? I think most of you know what the subject of a sentence is, where it's telling who or what is doing the action. Here are a couple of examples. The bird sat on its perch. The bird is a noun, and it's a subject. As a pronoun, you use I. I went home. No one says me went home. That doesn't sound right. Here's where it gets a little tricky. A predicate pronoun is like an equation in math. The subject equals the noun or pronoun following it. So think of it like this. He is the subject, is the verb. It equals king. Similarly, it is the subject, is the verb, and I is the predicate pronoun. Many people say it is me, so I may sound strange. It is she who called. It is he who bought the new book. Now let's look at what an appositive is. It means the same thing as the word or words immediately before it. So, if we say George, my brother, was home, and the subject is George, and my brother means the same thing as George, we can flip them and say my brother George was home without hurting the meaning. However, when you flip the words from one position to the other, you change what they're called. In the first sentence, George is the subject. In the second, it's an appositive, and vice versa. When we talk about function in a sentence, we're talking about, is the word a subject, a direct object, a predicate pronoun? If it can function as the subject, you want a subject pronoun. Look at the second sentence. George was elected president. I was not elected president. I can function as the subject. Therefore, in the preceding sentence, where it is the appositive of subject, you have a subject pronoun. George, not I, was elected president. These are the other pronouns used as objects. Me, you, him, her, it, us, you, them. Add to whom and whomever. There are only 4 functions for object pronouns. One is as the direct object of the sentence, another as an indirect object, a third the object of a preposition, and finally the subject or predicate pronoun of an infinitive. Don't get confused with the last one. I will explain. This is the most common construction in English. Subject, verb, direct object. A direct object answers what or whom and comes after the verb. It does not mean the same thing as the subject. Think of a receiver on a football team. That's what the indirect object does. Without the direct object, there is no indirect object. Look at the example. I bought what? A book. Who gets it? Her, the indirect object. Object of a preposition is always an object pronoun. The problem may come with a compound object of a preposition, but you follow the same rules. How many times have you heard people say, keep this between you and I? It's substandard and it's wrong. Let's look at the 4th instance. The subject or predicate pronoun of an infinitive. This sounds suspiciously like what the subject pronoun does. The key here is to find the infinitive. Do that first. An infinitive is the present tense of the verb plus 2. Let's look at the first example. My teacher wants me to do well. Find the infinitive. To do is to plus the present tense of the verb, and you ask yourself, who is going to do well? The subject is me. In the second sentence, the judge declared the winner to be her. Find the infinitive, to be. What's the subject of that? It's winner. The winner, to be, and her means the same thing as the winner, so it's a predicate pronoun. And because there's an infinitive, you use an object pronoun. Now let's look at relative clauses. These are ones that begin with who, whoever, whom, or whomever. The first thing you do is get rid of the rest of the sentence. Next, look for the verb. Then determine which is the subject and use the rules you learned for subject and object pronouns. So let's get rid of I will give the book to. In the relative clause, whoever wants it, wants is the verb. Who wants it? Subject is whoever. It is the direct object because it doesn't mean the same as whoever. Let's try another. This time, we're going to look at the relative clause in the sentence, he will see whomever he likes. Start with the relative pronoun, the indefinite pronoun, whomever, and determine the verb. The verb in the clause is likes. Ask yourself, who likes? Subject is he. Is he and whomever the same? The answer is no. So whomever is a direct object. Again, use this interactive website to take a little test. It will give you a score. Now we're ready for all the other punctuation marks in the English language. Once again, go back to session 2. Let's begin with the concept of possession. It means somebody owns something. We have regular nouns. These are the ones you add an S to make plural. If you realize that the word immediately following the apostrophe S word belongs to it, you should have no trouble using apostrophes for regular singular nouns correctly. Look at father's opinion and girl's coat. This means one father has an opinion and one girl has a coat. Now let's look at irregular nouns. These are ones that don't add S to make the plural. For example, man and woman. To make these possessive, you add an apostrophe S. So now one man has an opinion and one woman has a coat. Let's go back to regular nouns, the ones that you add the S to. First you make them plural, and then you make them possessive. So if we are talking about many fathers having opinions, you have them plural, S apostrophe, and possessive. More than one girl has a coat. You make it plural first, girls, make it possessive next, apostrophe, and you tell what they own. With irregular nouns, make them plural first, and then possessive. So man becomes men, and then make them possessive, apostrophe S, and you have men's opinions. Make woman plural, women, and then possessive, apostrophe S, coats. So many women have coats. Some words end in an S. You can use either the apostrophe or you can add apostrophe S. So you can have the princess, apostrophe, or the princess's wedding, the Jones house, or the Joneses' house to talk about the family. If you add apostrophes to personal pronouns, you either have no word, or in the case of ITS, you have a contraction meaning it is. And that brings us to contractions. You insert the apostrophe only where the letters have been omitted. Not before and not after. Look at the examples. The only time you use apostrophes in plurals is when you have letters used as letters and words used as words. Look at these examples. Using two E's, apostrophe S, in complement means something completely different from complement with the I. Some students confuse ANDS, A-N-D apostrophe S, with ANS, A-N apostrophe S. Similarly, plurals of symbols and abbreviations may have apostrophes. Just be careful not to use an apostrophe when you form the plural of a number. Look at the two examples here. These can be tricky. The first one is a plural adjective describing coats. It is no possession. The second one, the apostrophe, is not where the letters have been omitted. Let's look at 3. This is very much like the example you had before. They're words used as words. Number 4, the second sevens is incorrect. You do not use apostrophe with numbers. Number 5. This means 1950s because it indicates something's been left out. And the temperature was never 1950 degrees. 6 is correct. 7 is not because we have a singular adjective, this meaning one. So there's got to be one boy, apostrophe S, mother, is a school volunteer. Let's look at the paragraph and use the apostrophes in context. Sentence 1. Alexander's vacation had just begun. So the vacation belongs to Alexander. We use apostrophe S because it's a singular person. It was something he had been looking forward to. He took care of things around his house. We don't need an apostrophe with things, it's a simple plural. Sentence 4. He loaded up the camper so there'd be enough supplies to last a while. We have a contraction in there, so we have to put an apostrophe in before the D in there'd, meaning there would be. The duffel bag was full of food and books, simple plural, such as Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness belongs to Conrad. He was the author. Apostrophe S in Conrad's. He wanted to get some work done on his land, but he didn't. This is a contraction. N apostrophe T. Intend for his vacation to be all work. It's a good day, he thought. It is apostrophe S. To work up a sweat and then come back to the camper and settle down with a good book. Now that's the life that Thoreau lived. Apostrophe S, that is. Of course, Thoreau never mentioned mosquitoes, snakes, or 100-degree heat. Mosquitoes and snakes are simple plurals. But Alexander was determined to ensure his vacation wasn't going to let anything dampen his spirits. Wasn't is a contraction, and you need N apostrophe T. Take this interactive test for more apostrophes practice. We're ready now for hyphens. Use 2 or 3 words used as a single adjective before a noun except if the first ends in ly. 2 or 3 words may comprise a single noun. Here you see 6-year-old, 4th graders, 12th graders are all hyphenated. At some point, everybody has seen a word divided between syllables at the end of a line that runs onto the next line. This rule speaks for itself. This rule is less common, but you may see it. Let's start at the beginning. Daughter-in-law is 3 words used as a single noun. In the second example, Mr. Allen was the only player-coach because this is also 2 words used as a single noun. Number 3, I wrote prophesy when I meant prof hyphen a C. You've continued the word on the next line and it's broken between syllables. Number 4 is one of those odd anti-hyphen American sentiments where the word may have a prefix that would affect the pronunciation. 5, Joaquin never liked double-breasted suits. This is 2 words, double-breasted, as a single adjective describing suits. 26, 25 is hyphenated because it is a number. 7, anti-imperialist, would affect pronunciation. Well-known is 2 words used as a single adjective for Oscar Wilde. Long-winded describes the author's article, and it's long-winded is hyphenated. 2 words used as a single adjective. The soldier re-enlisted, you could have a hyphen between re and enlisted. Here you have another link for an interactive test. We now look at colons. First, use a colon before a list in a sentence. No one generally has trouble with this. Or this, if they're writing about the Bible. People may have forgotten about the colon in a business letter, though. All right? In question number 1, you need colons after the 6 in both instances because they're times. In number 2, put a colon after included because you have a list that restates what's included. Question number 3, you have the same thing. Add these to your list when you go to the grocery store. Colon. All the things that have to be added. Number 4, put a colon after Dr. Klinger. And finally, number 5, put a colon after 4 in 4 a.m. and after 1 in 1 a.m. 2 interactive websites will give you an actual score when you practice. After the apostrophe, the comma is the most misused punctuation. Use commas in a series. The one before the and is optional. Some of you had a problem with this for the discussion for session 7. This prescriptive grammar rule goes back to compound sentences again. Setting off a relative clause beginning with who, which, what, or that, and leaving it out without changing the meaning of the sentence takes commas which set it off. Introductory elements such as yes or no take at the beginning of the sentence take a comma. Number 2, a participial phrase or an infinitive phrase are generally used as adjectives. In the first example, running down the street, comma, she slipped and fell. Please be aware that whatever comes after the comma is running down the street. Many people have what's called a dangling participle or a dangling element, as you would have in the second one with the past participle. Too tired to eat. He went straight to bed. He was too tired to eat. Whatever comes after the comma is being described. And in the infinitive phrase, you have the same construction. She was going to be ready for her presentation. Number 3, you've got a string of prepositional phrases at the beginning of the sentence. In the woods, near the river, and up the hill are all prepositional phrases. Finally, we come back to the complex sentence. When it begins with a dependent clause, use a comma after the dependent clause. Now we come to interrupters. The appositives, as we had before when we looked at subject pronouns, mean the same as the word immediately preceding it. In direct address, you are talking directly to somebody. Hey, George, I'm talking to you. Parenthetical expressions are ones you can leave out of the sentence that will not affect the meaning. Look at the example. Items in a date are seldom incorrect. Make certain to put the comma between the city and the state in the second example. The third example is a little more esoteric. If you are writing out the names of the street, the town, and the city, use commas between each. So you have Post Office Box 203, comma, Shelton, comma, Connecticut, and the zip. On an envelope, you have separate lines for these. Next, you have the salutation in a friendly letter. Use a comma after the person's name. And finally, a title after a name takes a comma. Finally, we have a little practice. The commas should be used after are and think, because it is setting off an interrupter. I think can be left out of the sentence without affecting its meaning. The second one, Celine, who does not usually tell anyone what she feels, is a non-essential clause. You can say Celine said she didn't want to go to the dance. Third one, It's an introductory infinitive phrase. One has to get tickets for some Broadway musicals. So you have a comma after musicals. In 4, you are setting off an introductory participial phrase. Juan was listening to the radio. Spangler, comma, his own dog, comma, are a positive. His own dog is Spangler. So that's in a positive. They mean the same thing. In sentence number 5, we're setting off items in an address. I used to live at 16689 Sutton Avenue, comma, Milpitas, comma, California, and here before the coordinating conjunction but in a compound sentence, you use a comma, but we have since moved to 1895 Holland Way, comma, Dubuque, comma, Iowa. Sentence 6, Valley of the Moon, comma, the name of a section in Napa County, California. Napa County, comma, California, comma. All right. The name of a section in Napa County, California is in a positive of the Valley of the Moon. You use a comma between county and the state. 7. We have a series. Did not see how he could organize, comma, write, comma, and proofread. Number 8. By the pilings of the old pier, comma. You've got a group of prepositional phrases. And then we go on. I found 4 starfish, comma, a clam, comma, and a sea anemone. These are items in a series. Number 9. Yes, comma, an introductory element Helen did mention. And finally, you have an interrupter. Put commas around therefore. I believe, comma, therefore, comma, fraternities are good. These 3 websites will help you practice. We're getting down to the wire with the last punctuation mark, the semicolon. You can use it almost as a period between 2 independent clauses. The key here is to remember that you have 2 independent clauses. So you set up the semicolon, the conjunctive adverb, and a comma. Here's the pattern. Semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma. In this example, holiday traffic has always been a menace to safety, and on 1/4 of July, 400 people were killed in traffic accidents are both independent clauses. Sometimes you have a series of items with the positives. Semicolons set these off. Let's look at the example. Bob, president of the student council. President of the student council is the appositive, means the same thing as Bob. President of the senior class means the same thing as Maria. Vice president of Aspira is the same thing as Karen. And class treasurer is the same as Jose. Each appositive following the name explains what position the person holds. Maria is the president of the senior class. Karen is the vice president of Aspira. Bob is the president of the student council. Jose is the class treasurer. In order to keep things clear, semicolons are used to. I will post all the links so you can copy them for the review. These are on semicolons. Our last exercise for tonight looks at semicolons and commas. Let's look at the first. Writing seems easy to outsiders looking in. Semicolon, however, comma. In actuality, it is difficult work. This is a conjunctive adverb. The second example. The committee members consisted of Colleen Watkins, comma, chairperson, semicolon, Alexander Dolan, comma, vice chair, semicolon, and Ellen Holden, comma, secretary. You have positives within a series and use semicolons for clarity between each. 3. The symbol of Mount Park Mustangs is a Mustang, semicolon, because you have an independent clause following. One stays parked in front of the school. Paulette likes making amateur movies, semicolon. She is quite good at it. 2 independent clauses connected by a semicolon. Chandler Maxwell, comma, who is to arrive on June 24, comma, 2012, comma, will be the main speaker. You can drop who is to arrive on June 24th, 2012, and the sentence still makes sense. It's a non-restrictive clause, and you have a comma between the day and year in the date. Keep going. You need a comma before and. You have a compound sentence here, and he will be introduced by the president of the association. Look at 6. June Carter, comma, a well-known singer, comma, the appositive, became even better known. Look at 7. Many musical performers have been labeled one-hit wonders because they have one big hit and never make the charts again. Be careful. This is correct as it stands. The and connects to verbs, not an independent clause. 8. Working carefully despite the rain, comma, the gardener. This is a participial phrase beginning the sentence. Working carefully despite the rain describes the gardener in the lawn care service did a fine job on the yard. Semicolon. The homeowner was impressed. It's a second independent clause. Family members attending the reunion were comma, a cousin from San Diego, semicolon, Ames Robbins, comma, a brother from Chicago, semicolon, and Rachel Long, comma, a sister from Detroit, are in a series. They each have an appositive, and you use semicolons between each for clarity. Finally, the antique clock, comma, showing signs of its age, is an interrupting participial phrase. Had to have its working parts lubricated. That ends the first independent clause. Use a semicolon. The watchmaker did an excellent job. Period. This concludes the review session. I know you will do fine on the exam. Good luck and good night. If you still have questions, ask away.